right, so in this video, we're going to talk about the proxy graphics variable that AutoCAD Civil 3D provides, and show you the results of what happens when you don't set proxy graphics to 1. So I have a drawing here in Civil 3D that I've created with a bunch of objects. These are Civil 3D objects, such as a surface. I've got profiles, section views, the assemblies over here. Then down here you'll see that I've got some other surfaces that are made from break lines or feature lines and grading objects. Here you can see is the corridor, and I even have a utility run in here as well, so a 3D pipe network. So if I was to take a look at this in the object viewer here in Civil 3D, you can see that this stuff has some elevations, all right, so it is elevated, and I've got the proxy graphics set. So I'll show you, basically it's just proxy graphics. You can just start typing in proxy graphics and it'll show up. You can see that I have it set to 1. It's either a 0 or a 1, and we want it to be a 1 when the drawing is saved and delivered to be used in Business Center. So when I say saved, it's not exported, it's not saved as a different version or a DXF or anything like that. It basically is type in proxy graphics, type in 1, set the variable to 1, and hit enter, and then save the drawing. Now, when you bring that drawing into Business Center with the proxy graphics variable set to 0, this is the result that you get. You'll notice that these are a bunch of boxes. You see some points. They're basically just boxes. If I look at it in 3D, you can see that they look like points, but they're actually just cubes of where the points would be. Okay, so I brought in all 4 drawings, so we'll go through those and I'll show you which ones, what happens in the results. So this is the results of proxy graphics set to 0. Worthless, really, data is no good to us, we can't use it. Now, if I came up and set the proxy graphics to 1, saved it in AutoCAD, brought it into Business Center, this is the result I get. You'll notice here that we get actual information that we can use. The surface, we get the contours. The corridor, we get the sample lines or the frequencies that are set within the corridor. Those are actually the cross sections. We get the feature lines that are there. The pipe network comes in as line work and points for the nodes. You can see here it's got some symbology for the pipes. The pipes come in as lines. It loses the 3D information. So you're going to lose some data. It's really not losing the graphics. What you're losing is the 3D information. If we look in 3D, you can see that anything that's a feature line, we lose its elevation. So all the feature lines along the road, the feature lines that made up the surface, and we'll talk about a better way of doing this, which is LandXML. But here you can see that we lose some of that data. We do get, though, in the corridor, which is nice, you do get the sample lines of the corridor assemblies. So here I've got the top, the paved, the road datum, and I'm going to show you later in another video how I achieved this. In most cases, this information may show up all on one layer, because I'm going to tell you probably 90% of the way that projects are configured in Civil 3D, they don't separate these out, and it's really easy for them to do. They just haven't had a need, but I'm going to show you the need, and hopefully we can get more people doing it that way. You can see, again, the sample lines that are shown there are all 2D. The contours are 3D, and then any 3D polyline is 3D as well. So that's the results of Proxy Graphics 1. So just by setting Proxy Graphics 1, I get all this information that I can use. I can elevate these lines here fairly quickly using the elevate line command that lets me use the intersection lines, where I can select the cross sections and then select all the lines and elevate them accordingly. So Takes a little bit of work, just a few steps to elevate it, but we do have the tools to do that fairly quickly, and you can build a surface, do takeoff, do whatever you need from this information. Now this is, again, just the CAD information. It's not the objects or the actual design data, but it is, again, the CAD objects. Now, there is another option in AutoCAD that is called Export Civil 3D. Now, if I export the drawing, it's going to bring up a dialog box where I have to choose certain settings. Here, I've got export settings. I can choose the version that I want to send it to. I can choose whether I want the feature lines to be 2D or 3D. Some other label scale, label background scale factors for exporting sheets. You can bind XREFs together. A lot of different things you can do. So, to be honest with you, the export option would probably be a preferred method. Just some caveats with that is that the 2020 version of AutoCAD Civil 3D, they've done some work on that export option. This is new, this export settings here, this 3D to 2D. Why they decided to do that, I'm not sure, but when you export it out, you're going to see that it keeps the 3D elevations of the feature lines. So this is why I would say this might be preferred. The problem is that prior to 2020, this export option, depending on how your drawings are set up, was pretty prone to crashing. It wasn't a matter of if, it was probably when. In fact, this particular drawing, when I opened it up in 2019 or 2018, tried to export it, it wouldn't let me do it. I've confirmed that I can export it in 2020, so they did fix whatever the issue may have been. Now, if we take a look in Business Center and we take a look at what happens to the export option, you'll see, again, we're going to get different results based on what you get or what you have set. Now, this is, again, the Proxygraphics set to 0. This is the only information that I get. I don't get a lot of information when I use the export command. So again, this Proxygraphics variable is important whether you're exporting it or just saving it. So here I'm exporting it with the Proxygraphics set to 1, and you're going to see now that I get all that information, but I also get additional information, and importantly, you'll see that I get all the feature lines are now 3D, so I don't have to elevate them. So if you're using 2020 AutoCAD, or you have somebody using your designer's using 2020 AutoCAD or Civil 3D, the export option would be ideal. If they don't want to go through the exercise of exporting it, the Proxygraphics will work. You just have to elevate the feature lines. But this way you get a little bit more information. You also notice that you get the triangles of the surface as well as the contours. And it's what you're going to see when you export is going to depend on what is displayed. So if the triangles weren't displayed here, and you export it out of Civil 3D using the Export Civil 3D option, then you won't get the triangles. They have to be displayed. The contours have to be displayed. But again, the export option is a good way of getting the data. You'll notice that some information is down here at 2D, so I do lose some. In this case, the boundary is down at 2D. Alignments in Civil 3D are all 2D, so the alignments are down here anyways. They're not going to be elevated, so you're going to have to elevate those as well. Again, this is just the CAD objects. What we want is actually a combination of the CAD objects and a LandXML file that's going to give us the design data, which we'll talk about in a follow-up video here. So again, have the Proxygraphics set to 1 regardless of whether you're saving it or exporting it. The other trade-off here, like this, if we take a look at this line, by exporting it, you'll see that the line, if I edit it, notice I lose the curved geometry. So the option with the feature lines and the save, you lose the 3D data, but you maintain the curved geometry. With the export option, you maintain the elevation data but lose the curve geometry. So it's going to depend on what information you have. Now, majority of these feature lines are actually just, you know, they're lines that are tessellated through the sample line, so they're not true curves anyways. That's just something to keep in mind. So again, Proxygraphics set to 1, save the drawing, or export Civil 3D will get you the data that you can use.